What's up, y'all, and welcome to episode 42 of Soul Seat Conversations, our mental health podcast, where we share mental health stories of resilience, and we build global community. The stories of mental health and resilience are for you to discover new ways to thrive via the brave voices of others. My name is Soliel Lindsey. I am your host and also the owner of Soul Rise Essentials, where we offer mental health apparel, merchandise, accessories for resilient humans on the grow. For you, your kids, your mama, your daddy, your grandparents. It's for everybody. It's bright, it's colorful, it's positive, it's uplifting with encouraging messages for you to build on your mental health journey and for you to spread light and good vibes with everybody that you encounter. So that's what I do. We have this podcast to build global community around mental health and share real stories. And so I can't even talk today, y'all. Today, I'm excited to share the story of Paula with y'all. Before we get her to come on in the room, I'm just going to share this with some people so they can tap in and join us live. Y'all, a lot of people will be able to relate to her story today, and it's going to be a really good conversation. And truly, I believe it's actually going to shake the table a little bit. So very excited for y'all to meet her and hear her story. If you are from Richmond, Virginia, where I live, you actually might know her. She is a well-known poet and author, and also just, I want to say, community member. You know, she does a lot of awesome things. So want to shout out my brother with the honey bees, 757 usual suspect. What's going on, friend? Y'all, I want to give you some announcements. First of all, this crew neck that you see me on is see I cannot talk on today. This crew neck that I have on today, if you're watching live, is not on the website. However, I'm just testing some stuff out. I'm not really crazy about it. But the things that I am crazy about are right here in my hand that I want to show you. We have some new merch, okay? Y'all, we have beanies, skull caps, whatever you want to call them, baby. They on the website. They are so soft. They are so breathable. They are such high quality. They are embroidered with our famous do good, be good message. And we got a color for just about everybody. Your kids can also wear these as well. My son, he'll be 6 next month, and he can fit this with absolutely no problems. So I'm going to go through these real quick and just show you the colors up close and personal for my girly girls and even for my guys who ain't scared of the pink, honey. You got pink, a hot pink actually. I learned that this mix right here is called Marl, M-A-R-L. So this is Marl brown. It's like a dark brown and a light brown mix. This is mad cute, okay? Let me show you this on. She is cute. She is a moment, okay? Also, we have bright yellow. Y'all know I love yellow, honey. It is one of the colors of our brand. We got the yellow, and then we also have orange in our brand. And this is the marled black and white, kind of like black and gray, actually. And it's beautiful. This is actually a top seller. These are now available on our website. Shout out to y'all. Y'all share with y'all friends so we can get this podcast going, honey. I cannot wait for y'all to hear today's story. Then we have our classic black, very classic. I've actually been wearing this for the last couple of days. On our website, they're only $27. Y'all don't pay for shipping ever on our website. So that's the price plus a little bit of tax. You know, we got to pay Uncle Sam, and we do business the right way around here, okay? Unfortunately, y'all, I'm not able to switch the screen over, but I will be doing that in post. So we also have this beautiful, I like to call it kind of like electric blue. It's very beautiful. Y'all know I'm extra. Is it navy? I don't know. I'm just gonna call it electric. Okay. Anyway, so again, our podcast exists. Well, we're a mental health podcast for humans on the grow. We exist to share stories of resilience, build global community, and for you to discover new ways to thrive via the brave voices of others. That brave voice today is none other than Paula. I'm gonna let her come on and tell y'all her last name because I don't want to mess it up. I think I know, but I'm gonna let you say it when you come sit in the soul seat. You can shop all of our merch, the merch that I just showed you if you're watching live, if you're watching the video version of this, at soulriseessentials.com. That's S-O-L, 3 words, Rise Essentials with an S.com. Beautiful merch, lots of new stuff on there actually. Also, I want to issue a trigger warning. There are some things shared in our podcast every episode that may hit an emotional point for you, and it's your responsibility to care for your mental health, okay? So we will discuss sensitive topics, and if there's something that's shared that's kind of like hitting that trigger point for you, pause it, come back later, or pause it and never come back to that episode again, because I want you to take care of yourself. So just know that we are not here to treat or diagnose anything. We are simply humans sharing our lived experiences. Although professionals with designators behind their name, even therapists, have been on our show. When they sit in the seat, the soul seat, they are simply a human being sharing their lived experiences. So no professional or medical advice is given. You can find all of our episodes on YouTube. We'll be streaming on platforms very soon as well, so y'all look out for that. But if you just type in Soul Seat Conversations on YouTube, you'll see our podcast playlist. This episode and all others will be on there. And I guarantee you're going to find some encouragement on this podcast. Like, I'm not biased, I could be, but I'm not. I hear from people all the time the impact of this podcast. So if you're watching the replay and you made it to the end, or you made it to this point and you rocking with the Soul Tribe family, leave some comments down below if you're watching the video version with some sunshine emojis. If you also have a mental health or resilience or mental wellness story to share, we would love to hear from you. You can email us at mystory@soulriseessentials.com. We got our podcast booked up for like the first and second quarter. Well, first quarter already gone. Lord have mercy. 2025 is getting on up out of here. We got second quarter kind of full, but we do this once a month, but we want to fill up the whole year. Okay. So y'all reach out to us, and if it's a good fit, we'll get you on the podcast. Happy Women's History Month. I am so excited about it. I know I'm making history. Okay. And even if you just a woman existing, baby, you making history too. Okay. You being here is part of history. So want to shout out to everybody joining us in the comments. Y'all share this with somebody so they can see it. And it's okay if you're here watching the replay. We're glad that you made it here. I also want to give y'all a couple updates. So for those of you who don't know, I own this company, and it's been almost 4 years in July 2025. And since last year, I've opened up the product-based business to services. So I am now a keynote speaker, which sounds crazy to say because I was so afraid of it. And from the people in the comments, I'm actually really good at it. So I'm available to speak, to facilitate, to host community, wellness, healing, mental health type events, entrepreneurial, business type events. I'm available. You can book me at booksoleil.com. That's SOLIEL, booksoleil.com. So yeah, y'all go shop the new hats I just showed. I know I see a couple people coming in, so I'm gonna show those real quick and get started, baby. We're gonna bring Paula in the soul seat. So just in case you missed it, here we are. We have these beautiful skull caps, beanies, scullies, whatever you call them, on the website. Shop soulriseessentials.com. And if you're new, you can get on our email or text list to receive a 15% off code, and you can actually use this for your first purchase. Okay. All right, that's all, y'all. Those are all my announcements. Y'all know how I like to do. Let's get Paula on up in the room, baby. To y'all, I see hubby in the building. I see mommy in the building. Y'all better show up for y'all girl. I love that. Paula.
Hey.
How you
I was
doing?
trying to figure out how my camera was going to work, but let me see. I think I can sit it right here.
Okay.
I got a folded phone, so.
Oh, okay. Get her straight. We ain't in no rush. Get her right. Get her right.
Okay, I might need to put it up here. Let me see. Okay, that'll work.
I love the background. You look gorgeous, honey. How you doing today?
Thank you. I am doing well. It is Thursday. I had therapy this morning, so I'm all right. I'm open right now, so that could be a good thing.
Well, thank you for being open, and thank you for being here. Welcome to the Soul Seat. I appreciate you agreeing to do this. I would like to introduce you to all of our people that don't know you yet, our Soul Tribe family. So just tell them who you are. I was going to say the last name, but I'm going to let her say it. I know you as Paula Gillison, but you are married now. So give it to us, honey. Who are you and what do you do?
Yes. So hello, everyone. My name is Paula Gillison-Akinwole. That's the last name. Most people just know me as Paula G. And it's funny because every time I get on the stage, they try the last name. And I'm like, it's okay. Just Paula G is fine.
Akinwole. I can say that. I just want to say
that. Yeah. Once you get it, it's easy. So yes, I am an author and a poet. I also teach therapeutic and creative writing, both in like traditional classroom settings, elementary, middle school, colleges, but also for families and, group therapy type session, or therapeutic, not therapy, but therapeutic type sessions. Um, Most people know me as a poet and an author. I am the owner of PG Artistry and For Lack of Better Words.com. So a blog space. We just celebrated 10 years. So, I'm very proud of that. That's the oldest relationship I got, other than my mama. Yes. And then with the business PG Artistry, we sell books, art, just things around creative expression to help you express more or just help you see more beautiful things in the world.
I absolutely love that. Congratulations on 10 years. And I know you've been a poet for even way longer than that, because I have seen you in our Community Tuesday Verses most notably. And I've always admired your work, always passing you by, seeing you. I admire poets in general, but your poetry has always been very authentic, very raw. And I'm like, that girl know herself and she's expressing herself. And even when you meet different versions of yourself, you still are centered in who you are. And I think a lot of people see that in Aries. Are you an Aries?
I am.
Okay.
Yes, 14th.
Yes. Okay, happy early birthday. Mine is on the
you.
19th and my son is on the 17th. So I definitely know that because of that spirit that you have as a creative, fiery, feisty Aries, we're going to say what need to be said. And I love the title of the podcast, For Lack of Better Words, because sometimes we just going to give it to you direct. Look, for lack of better word, this is what I got to say. So I love that.
Thank you. Being open and honest is difficult, but I have just found that as cliche as it may feel or sound, owning my own truth, having my stories, whatever they may be, whether I like it or not, whether it's ugly or pretty, it is what it is. And I think the first step for any healing journey is really just to acknowledge that.
Yeah.
It just is what it is.
Yeah, it is what it is. And that's what I've admired and seen in your work throughout the years. I'm in my 30s now. I'm sure I probably was like 19, 20 when I first started seeing you perform, but that has always been there. Like you say it like it is, as raw, as ugly, as pretty as it may be. And I love that. I appreciate that.
I come from a long line of poets and women writers, some who were bold and brave, some who lived in a time where they had to, be a little bit more quiet, silent, and reserved. And so, I came out the womb doing poetry. I can express myself better that way than anything.
That. Well, as you know, Soul Seek Conversations is a mental health podcast. So I have a couple different segments here. And the first one I want to start off with is simply by asking you, how is your mental health today? On a scale from 1 to 5, 1 being like, real low, 5, you're really at your peak and you're feeling good. So how are you feeling in this moment right now, mental health wise?
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm going to give myself a 4.192.
Okay.
Okay. There's some reasons for those numbers.
So what's the 0.192? What we giving? What's going on?
It's because I've been doing the work today. So I had my therapy session at 8:00 this morning. Shout out to Lanice at Roots to Results.
I've been on the podcast. Love her.
Yeah. So having that session this morning was helpful. We've been doing the work. And so ultimately, as soon as I kind of got off the session, I took a moment to meditate, to kind of pull myself together, to acknowledge the truths about how I feel and what's going on in my life today. My brother just actually came through surgery. So shout out to my mom for even being here, because she's been in surgery with my brother this morning, and now she's sitting here with me. And so that 0.192 or whatever number I said is that little bit of extra nudge that I gave myself today by, 1, having that session, doing the work, but 2, just sort of sitting and talking with myself. And I had a little conversation with, Mother Toni Morrison this morning. I sit there and listen to her. I have a candle of her above my head. Just reminding myself that I'm all that in a bag of chips, just a little bit.
Okay. And yes, honey, shout out to Mom, because I did a test run before this official episode, and Mama was the first person in here. I said, nice to meet you. You must be Mama. So shout out to your brother, prayers for him, and that he continues on his healing journey, and for you and your family as well. So thank you for sharing that. I actually really like that perspective. And I think, considering everything that you have going on right now, that's in a really good place. And it's not for me to judge. I just wanted to commend you for being where you at, even in the midst of everything.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a choice at this point. And I don't say that, for anyone else. Just for me, today was about sort of making choices about how I feel and how I want to feel. And it goes back to, I get dressed, whether I feel like looking good or not. Sometimes you put those clothes on and it helps you boost yourself just a little bit. So today was one of those days where I did a couple of boosters on purpose,
I love that.
intentional.
I love that. So, two things. First thing, did you set up you could say, girl, I want to answer that. Just let me know. Did you set up that appointment today intentionally because of the podcast, because of what you would be sharing, or was it just coincidence?
No, coincidence. Every Thursday, 8 o'clock on the dot.
First thing in the morning, child. Love that. Well, good for you taking care of yourself. I would like to share as well where I'm at on a scale from 1 to 5. I'm actually like a 4. I made a really tough decision recently, and it was very hard to do, but I knew it was necessary. But in doing that, even though it was hard, it lifted a weight off of my mind and off my shoulders and off my back, baby.
Yeah.
And so it's been a lot of tough conversations in dealing with the situation, a lot of double-mindedness, like I feel this way, but I also feel this way. So it's been two very real truths happening at the same time, even though some don't even think they go together. But I've been receiving a lot of love on top of that. And so even though end of a chapter, is here for me, I gave a lot of self-compassion, and people around me also have been offering that too. And I don't know about you, but I'm a words of affirmation kind of girl. Is that you? Because you're a poet?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. So the words of affirmation have been really huge for me because sometimes situations in life happen, and it makes your confidence meter go down a little bit. And eventually you get back up. But I do believe with community like the one I'm building, shout out to the Soul Tribe family. With community, we can get through so much together. It's a time to isolate and heal and to do things on your own, but we do need community. And so I'm actually about a 4 because of my community right now. So thanks for letting me share.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Thank you for sharing.
Yes, honey. Let's get into it. Before we get into your story, I also would like to I love to start my podcast off with just like recentering and a mindful moment is what I call it. And we actually do a breathing technique together called box breathing or square breathing. Have you heard of that before?
I haven't. No, that's interesting. Okay, I'm ready.
Okay, so very simple, very accessible. I like efficiency. So I introduce this on my podcast because anybody can do it. We're going to do it right here live, but you're driving in the car, somebody pissed you off, cut you off, whatever, you can do it. But it's really just 4 breaths. You inhale for 4 seconds, and then you hold it for 4 seconds, and then you release it for 4 seconds. And typically the box, is going around like that. So it's 4, 4, hold on. It's, it inhale 4, hold 4, exhale. And that 4 right here is supposed to be you wait 4 seconds, but we ain't gonna wait 4 seconds. We're just gonna keep going. So that's what it is. So let's do that together. If you don't mind just closing your eyes. And I will count us off in 3, 2, 1. Inhale for 4, 2, 3, 4, and hold and release. 2, 3, 4. Inhale for 4 and hold, release. Third one, inhale and hold and release. Last one, inhale and hold, release. I love doing that because it initiates an immediate relaxation response. And it also helps us just recenter. Whatever we were doing before we turned the podcast on, that's over with. Now we can transition into your story. So, as the people know, first of all, how you feel after doing that?
I'm good. I'm ready.
Okay, good.
I got my water. So if I take sips, it's because this is life and I need it.
Oh, absolutely. Girl, I got mine too, honey toast. Listen, we gonna do that together. So, 444. What? Shout out to Moo. Is that Husby? He said it's his favorite breathing cadence. I love that.
Yes, husband.
Hey, hi. Thanks for joining us. So, Paula, we know that you are poets. You have shared that you do a lot of creative healing and writing exercises for the community. You are did I say it already? Author, poet, all the things that you shared. I love to go back. I love to hear about people's origin stories. Who was little Paula when she was growing up?
Hey, little Paula growing up. So, the interesting thing about what we will talk about is that a lot of my past is cloudy. So I have an idea of who I was, and sometimes I have to kind of really think back as, am I remembering that correctly? Is that
Mm-hmm.
sort of how things went? Always an artistic child. So everything from painting and drawing and writing, of course, to, the way I tortured my little brother by the way I decorated the room. So I felt the need to put balloons on the ceiling. He just was going to have to deal with balloons on the ceiling because we shared a room and I was older. Um, a big family, all these brothers. So you could just imagine a little bit of, how that was being the only girl. A combination of being a tomboy, but also like just being overly girly in order to make up for the fact that there were all these brothers. Plenty of cousins, summer camp, grandma house, what did they call it? Sunday, summer school type situation. All of that good stuff. A whole lot of church. My mother is a minister. My grandma was a minister. Auntie and uncles are all ministers. Cousins, everybody, and everybody goes to church. So whether it was a family church or just a neighborhood, everybody was going to church. That's something that we did. Sundays, Wednesdays, and all the services in between. So me growing up was a lot of reading, artistic expression, a lot of going to church. Um, and a combination of sort of blending all of those things together. I also read a lot. I was way too young reading The Color Purple, I tell you. I'm reading Alice Walker's the Temple of My Familiar right now, which some people kind of consider a part two to The Color Purple. Not quite, but the characters show up in this story as well. So I was young, I was curious, I was also very rebellious. I stayed in trouble at church. I was always getting no punishment. I think I got um, I got in trouble for doing something and got put on the hospitality team. And it was supposed to be like a 6-month stint. I think we did it for like 3 or 4 years because I just kept getting in trouble and having to start my 6 months
Yeah.
over. I just really struggled with the idea of giving people a chicken leg versus a chicken wing. They was like, that's all you had to do, Paula. And I'm like, I want to give you a wing, so you taking a wing. I was just rebellious for no reason.
Yeah.
But also thought I was also thought I was being, just the sweetest kid. I thought I won't give my mama no trouble. And I look back now, I was like, oh, you were giving her hell.
Relatable.
Yeah.
I love that. Well, thank you for sharing. I know today we're going to talk about a lot about church, some about religion as well, because of your diagnosis, which is a new diagnosis. So we can talk about that, share what that is, and then again, I want to keep going back. And
Yeah.
shout out to your mama. She said hospitality team is punishment. And Moose said vacation Bible school. Yeah,
That's
we
the
know all about it.
term. That's the term I was looking for. Vacation Bible school. Yes. So scrupulosity also is known as religious OCD. Essentially, it is, and I got myself some notes here. So if I'm glaring over, it's because I know I also have ADHD and need my notes. So it's being obsessed or like hyper focused on moral rightness, moral codes, the fear that you'll be punished by God or some higher power if you are not acting in a sort of way that fulfills this moral and religious code. And it's an OCD because it's a form of compulsion, the things that you are doing to try to remain on this rightness or fulfill this moral code. And compulsion in regards to those obsessive thoughts as well, those that hyper focusing and over focusing that happens. And it's all based around, the fear of possibly going to hell or being blasphemous because you're not, being perfectly aligned with this religious expectation.
Wow. Wow. So 2 questions. Well, statement. Thank you for sharing that. That was news to me when we did our pre-interview. I had never heard of that. And I did say I was going to go research and I just haven't had time, but I'm absolutely going to do
Good.
it. And thank you for sharing that because I know for me, it was a surprise and like, whoa, that's a thing. But now when I'm hearing you say it, I'm like, I think I know a couple people who actually might struggle with that. They may not have that diagnosis, but some form of it, right?
Yeah.
Of those actions and those thoughts. But is that diagnosis that you got, that's clearly in the DSM, is that right? That book that they
Yeah.
use to diagnose people?
Yeah, so it is. I was very lucky because the therapist that I had at the time was actually studying and, being specific about researching OCD in Black people.
Mm,
And so this wasn't someone who was kind of just pulling out the wind. This was someone who had been studying and looking into it specifically because she recognized that OCD in Black people looks a lot differently than it may look in other
mm,
spaces, other cultures.
mm,
Um, and so as I sort of discussed it more and was talking about where it shows up, she was like, this isn't just OCD, because I do have some of the traditional ones and things that people think about. This is OCD that is being stemmed from your religious interactions. And the thing is, it's not something that sort of pops up for everyone.
mm,
It's for people who are probably already prone to anxiety, already have a sort of temperament towards OCD, gets coupled with the fact that they're in an environment that feels high pressured. And it may not even be high pressure, they're just internalizing it that way.
yeah.
And so I could tell you some stories about the way that I grew up when it comes to church that may not have at the time, the people didn't realize that this might not be the best place for a 10-year-old to be hanging out because I'm internalizing this and it is big, now I can't sleep at night because I'm fearing demons. And it sort of grows into this space where every aspect of your life needs to exist on the perfect median in order to avoid hell, avoid punishment, all of these sort of things.
All the things. My goodness. Yes, I do want to go back and I do want to hear about your experiences that may have led up to this. I want to also ask you, because there's so many different denominations. Would you like to share what denomination you grew up?
Yeah, so it's interesting. We sort of started off non-denominational. We went to a church that was multicultural. So the pastors were from, I believe, Barbados. And then a lot of people from the church was everywhere from India to Grenada and all the places in between. We had a sister church I'm not sure exactly where in Africa, but they would come down every year. So very cultural and diverse. And then we went to a Baptist church, a strict Baptist church, which was very different for a few years. And then we went back to non-denominational, and which is, sort of where I stayed until I left the church.
And your mom in the comments says Trinidad also.
Mm-hmm.
It makes me think about when you said that Barbados.
Get
It
me
made me think
straight in
about,
these comments.
huh? What'd you say?
I said you get me straight in these comments.
Right. She's like, here's the back.
Yes.
It makes me, when you said Barbados, it made me think about the beloved late Dr. Miles Monroe. I love his teachings and what I do know about them. And so I thought about that. So thank you for sharing that experience. I didn't grow up heavily in the church, but when I did go, when I was introduced to like weekly going to church, because we was definitely one of them families, honey, back in Georgia, where we would, honey, put them lace socks on for Easter, and that was about it. But, started going a little bit more regularly when I moved here, and it was a Baptist church experience. And thankfully, I hear so many stories about experiences in the church. I relate when I laugh about certain things, when people post certain memes, and it's like, how do we all have the same experience on the lighthearted, more funny side of things? But I haven't experienced church hurt in that specific setting. I actually shared a live on my personal page today where I did experience some church hurt myself recently as an adult, actually. And I was like, dang, how I come this far? And then finally can relate to people's experiences. But I would love to hear more about like when you were in that Baptist church setting, what that was like for you.
Yeah. So similar to you, I didn't experience any church hurt until my adult years. I loved church. My brothers sort of bucked against it a little bit, but I was always wanted to be there, whether one, because I enjoyed singing. So I was in the choir and singing behind my mama. And we were and I said choir, we were a praise team, child. So I had to hold my own in that soprano section sometimes. So I absolutely sort of loved going to church. I love the community. I loved learning. I would sit in on all of the sessions, everything from, children's church to marriage classes. I wanted to be there for all of it, even at a young age. So the Baptist church setting was really different for me, but I also really appreciated the traditionalism of it all. I've always been a fan of traditions and watching people sort of have rituals and, just any sort of tradition that can repeat. That's something I'm trying to build for my family now. I want my son to be like, we started doing this when I was 1, and at 30 years old, we still do this for my family. And I forgot to mention, we actually went to Catholic churches quite often too, Catholic services. And so the Baptist church I enjoyed. I liked singing hymns. I was ready when they said it's time for the kids to have a scripture. Paula won't go say Jesus wept.
Okay.
I had something prepared. So I really sort of enjoyed that setting. And when I look back on it now, there were definitely some spaces that were difficult in those settings, but it wasn't based on the church. My family was just going through a really tough time at that moment. When I think back on it now, that there were people in that space who were a tad bit predatory. At that time, though, I was young, I was innocent, I was simply just sort of enjoying church.
Yeah. When you were talking, it made me think of my thoughts about your poetry when I would listen to it. I could tell, like, how you walk into the artistic space and it's an open mic or whatever, and it's typically a look. You know how you got the artsy people, you might got the rappers over here, and then you got the people who do a little rap, little. It's any group, any social group, we typically look a certain way, right? And so I love seeing you because I was like, she looked like a little church girl. And like your stories that you would share, I love the representation though, because you were still artsy, you knew everybody in there. And shout out to Tuesday Verses and Lorna
Right.
Pinkney and
Yes.
just that space
Yeah.
in Richmond. It's really a good memory for me. But I loved what you represented, because it's like it was so different than all the other things. Everything I saw and heard was dope. But I don't know, like even from the way that you dressed and the way that you spoke and the way that you presented your poetry, I loved what you represented in that space. Because, when I think of church girl, I don't necessarily think a girl at a open mic. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I appreciate that because a lot of when I look back during that time frame, I cringe a little bit because I sometimes felt like my motives were, well, at the time I felt like my motives were pure, but I was coming in, sometimes just fire and brimstone. I'm like, I'm here. I love Tuesday Verses. I'm trying to get oh, look at Poet Laureate Roscoe Burnham's calling me in the middle of my session. I'm gonna call him. I just gonna throw it out there, who calling me. But yeah, so I look back at that time frame now, and a lot of the poems I was doing I thought were rooted in love, but I'm coming on stage telling people that they sinning and they need to get it together. And I'm also, it was sort of double-minded as well, because the following week I'm like, I want to tell y'all all about this new boy that I done fell in love with and everything I'm feeling. But then also, so we had this sort of concept um, in the church that I went to as a young adult, where we sort of operated in stealth mode. And so we were trained to go into spaces, blend in, but be intentional about ministering to people. And so a lot of those early years was, I felt like, I was in this space where I'm here with a mission, and trying to get people. And it was detrimental to the friendships that I was building at the time, because there was this space that just sort of was, I'm trying to be like a ninja, and I'm getting in there, and I'm trying to minister to people versus building community. And so while I appreciate the vulnerable people we're seeing, people like Roscoe would get me together on a regular basis. He was like, you were so churchy. We couldn't talk about nothing without you ready to pray us down.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, there were some good spaces in that, that was necessary for that time in my life. But, I definitely wish I would have came in with a more pure heart in the beginning, and not have been so like, raw, let me get you.
I appreciate you honoring that and sharing that. It made me think about some relationships with people that I have, and how in most, I don't study all these different religions, but the ones I do know about, it seems like if you're tied to one of them, that if you are a person that hangs out with the others, you are. This is what the church hurt I experienced recently, because I hang out with the others or I'm in proximity with the others, that something's wrong with me, because I'm not trying to beat them over their head with what I believe in. And so it's an interesting dynamic, in trying to be somebody that is tolerable, that is open-minded, that wants to learn, because it's a big old world outside,
Yeah.
and so for me, and the way my brain works, I'm curious. I've always been very curious, but it seems like curiosity, and open-mindedness is frowned upon in some religious settings. And so I love that you're able to honor the fact that this is where I was. It probably was a bit much for some, and even for you, as you said. But you're saying now, like, I should have been leaning on community and building connection, and I think that's where I'm at. And I know that certain people in more religious settings that I may have affiliation with kind of frown upon that, and it was told to me. And I was just shocked by that, but it's a lot of reckoning that I think a lot of us in our age group are doing right now. And it makes a
Yeah.
lot of people uncomfortable. And even having this conversation, I know there's going to make a lot of people uncomfortable. But as I shared with you in our pre-interview, facts are facts. Lived experiences are lived experiences. And that's what we're sharing here, our lived experiences.
Absolutely.
So I'm loving this conversation, and just like how open and honest that you're being about it, and honoring who you were then and who you are now, and also who
Yeah.
you'll become. We are
Yeah.
still becoming.
Yeah.
So love it. I wanted to also talk about some of the rebellion that you share, because I know that you shared in one church setting that you became pregnant. And we know how even recently there was this viral video going around about a girl who had to announce in front of the church that she was pregnant.
Yeah.
And it sparked all these things, because they like, well, where the daddy at? Why he ain't over here getting chastised as well, And so we know how those situations can be handled.
Mm-hmm.
And it could be hurtful, and it could cause some serious trauma. So I do want to talk to you about that. And before we get into that part of your story, I have to share something. I was at a church recently that I visit quite often, and it was so interesting to see this moment happen, because it's not what we saw in that viral video that
Yeah.
just came out, and it's not what so many people have experienced in their own religious settings and churches. So we were doing altar call, and most the non-denominational churches don't even actually do that. But that's what I like about this church. They still do altar call.
Okay.
And pastor was like, I'm picking up something, God's telling me something, that people are struggling with this and that. He started naming out different things. He said, somebody in here is pregnant, and
Mm.
you are about to get rid of that baby because you scared of what the church is going to say. You scared of what people are going to say about you. And he was like, you going to keep that baby, and blah, 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 all of this stuff. And I was just like, wow, this is so, you see things online and people say, well, churches are bad. Why would they do that? This is blah, blah, blah. And just like Black folk, just like everybody, we're not a monolith. And so that was a very healing experience, I bet, for whoever was dealing with that, probably more than one person. In a very different experience than what I noticed on social media, how people portray like the church. And so I'm one of those people, like, again, two truths can exist at the same time.
Yeah.
So I want to hear more about your personal experience and being pregnant in the church.
Yeah. Yeah. So at the time, I was going to a church that was almost all young people. And I was leaving my family church to go to this church of all young people. So that was kind of difficult. I had sat down with my pastors, who are my aunt and uncle, and I'm telling them that I'm going to this church where the pastor is only about 30 something. Everybody else is in their 20s or 30s. And they were just like, okay, are you sure? They weren't very happy about it. And it's still a little tense to this day. And it's been over like 15 years. But I went to that space, went to that church, and really was having a different life experience. My pastor was now like a friend. We all hung out. We were all intentional about helping each other live life and grow together.
Yeah.
But the reality is that, like most people who are attempting to do well together, whether it's like a school setting or some sort of organization, people start to be dishonest because they want to appear like they are meeting the goals and the standards. And so I have always been intentional about being honest and having to be the first one on the dance floor if that makes everybody else dance. I will be uncomfortable and awkward and weird if I can get you to do it too. And so when I found out I was pregnant, it was shortly after I had um, declined being ordained. So I had gone through the entire process, all of the training. We were supposed to get ordained, and like a week or so before my ordination, I had even done my initial sermon, but a week before my ordination, I was just like, I don't think that being a minister, becoming a pastor, is the life path for me. I was working a call center job at the time. I was like, I don't want to preach on Sunday and then work at a call center on Monday. Like, if I'm going to live this life, it needs to be in fullness for me. And so the depression of walking away from that had me wilding out. So 2 and 2, I ended up pregnant. We were actually at church having a baby shower for another woman at the church who was also pregnant out of wedlock. And it was just sort of uncomfortable, intense, and people were sort of skirting around and not wanting to talk about the obvious fact that she has had sex with somebody. We don't know who. Now she's pregnant. And so, as uncouth as it may have been, I sort of popped up and was like, I'm pregnant too, in the middle of this girl's baby shower. I'm so sorry. Would have never really done that to her, but sort of wanting to be like, listen, we're not about to shame her. At the time, I knew somebody else was pregnant and they also weren't saying anything. And I'm like, we go to this church that's supposed to be different because we're all young and we're trying to undo a lot of the traditionalisms that we had experienced in church before. And in order to do that, we're going to have to be brutally honest. I remember a situation, and this is sort of just a side note, where we were having an after church meeting and pastor was trying to re-encourage us to sort of get back on track. People wilding out. I'm running into people in situations. They had ran into me one time at the bowling alley, flat out drunk. And I remember they asked me, they was like, are you going to be okay, Paula? And I was like, let me just do whatever I'm going to do tonight, and we'll get it together tomorrow at church on Sunday. Y'all can pray for me tomorrow. But tonight I'm already drunk. Just let me finish doing what I'm going to do. That's how honest I was. So this particular meeting he's trying to get us all together. And I get annoyed with all of the politics and the sort of talking in circles. And I raised my hand and I was like, it might just be easier if we ask who didn't have sex with brother so-and-so. Because at this point, we talk in circles, and that's really what's happening. Everybody's sleeping with brother so-and-so ain't telling. And then we got a bunch of frustration in the church. And it was awkward, but everybody kind of bust out laughing and released the stress. And I was like, the reality is we are all young. Everybody's bodies are doing what they do at this age, which is turned up, it's hype. And we're trying not to talk about it, while also it's the number one thing on our mind. And one thing I do know is after leaving church service, that's when people are, I don't want to use the H word, but it keeps popping in my head. That's when people are the most turned up in that sexually. It's like after leaving the intimacy of church and praise and worship, I used to have to be like, I can't go on a date tonight. I can't see no boys. Like it's too much. I got to stay to myself. But we weren't talking about it. We were all just trying
What is
not
that
to
about?
do it.
What do you think that's about?
Listen, I could come up with an answer, but I don't know. I think that we were doing church. And so we were doing what we know. And even though we were trying to be different, we're young, we had DJs and strobe lights, and we're trying to kind of create this new and young and fresh church environment. But we're still people, and the same problems that existed when grandma was in church are existing now, and people still aren't talking about it. And that's everything from all of those church hurts that we talk about. Those situations are still happening. I would have never imagined that in my 30s, I would have had to deal with a predatory pastor, and that would have been the church hurt that I was experiencing. I used to pride myself on the fact that other people would talk about church hurt, and I was like, y'all must be sensitive. I've never been hurt in church. And then that thing smacked me in the face.
Wow. First of all, I've been writing some notes down. People are people.
Yeah.
People are people. And I think that's what people forget. And our brains are designed a certain way, our bodies, our hormones, and nobody wants to talk about that. That's not what this podcast is about right now. So, but I did want to touch on that, and I just wanted to raise that statement up even higher because, yes, people are just people. Also, you mentioned you raising your hand, which I can totally see you doing. There are so many moments in church. And I'm actually gonna be visiting a mosque soon. I'm so curious. Like when I drive past like other religious buildings and temples, I wonder what they be doing in there. It's so funny. I ran into a pastor at a pop-up event I was doing, and it's the specific church I ride past. I said, what does that mean? And I met the pastor. He came to my table and just randomly came to my table. We talking about my brand, the kindest person, down to earth.
Nice.
I blacked me. I was like, that's your church? He was like, yeah, you should come on second Sunday. It's like kind of like a Baptist church experience. I said, okay. So I haven't gone yet. I'll be a little leery. I ain't even gonna hold you, but I'm gonna visit that one day as well. So just I be wanting to know stuff. Anyway, I sometimes I go and I be wanting to be like, but you know, that's frowned upon. And then again, I can only imagine if I'm doing something, it's all these people and you interrupting what I'm trying to do. I get it. But one thing I love about this church that I spoke about earlier, shout out to the Life Church. I don't know if they're still doing it, but it was called Shalom Sunday on fifth Sundays, where they would have tables and you sit with other people. And it's kind of like a open free for all where you can ask questions. And I was like, this is dope. Like this was weird to me. What you think about this? And then, you know, you kind of like Bible study in a sense, but you sitting with real people. And I met some dope people. I was like, this is cool because I really can raise my hand and ask the question. And Pastor walking around like they were packing up. I said, oh, you coming over here because we got to go? He was like, no, I just came to see what's up. What y'all doing? Positive experience. Very positive experience. But I be having questions, you know, and certain stuff that be said, I'll be like, so y'all just don't, like, ain't nobody here. You know what I'm saying? So this is how people feel. And I'm not saying everyone, but even the ones who act like that's not how they feel, I'm sure they have those moments like, I know you ain't just say that, you know, because people are people. And I think people forget that. So I love that you did that and broke the ice, you know. You talked about people keeping up appearances. And that I think is I'm not a therapist, you know, but I was trying to figure out, well, how did this happen? You know, how did she get this diagnosis? And I think largely because we feel like we got to keep up appearances, you know, even though people are just people. When you leave, you feeling aroused or whatever, like you want to drink, you stressed out, whatever. We are just people. And people forget that, but we act like in these private moments, we're not struggling with this stuff and we're not open and honest and authentic about it. We brush over it. You know, oh yeah, I still be cussing sometimes or smoking cigarette. What people be really struggling with some serious dark stuff.
And then thinking they're alone because no one is talking about it. Like, you know, when I raise my hand, I'm like, all of y'all are thinking you're doing this solo. All of y'all are doing it. And I know because I'm a little bit of a gossip. And so I'm sitting in church and I'm talking to you and you telling me all your business. And when I say gossip, not that I'm sharing, I just like to hear it all. And so now I'm hearing everybody's business and I'm thinking like, don't none of y'all know that y'all all doing the same thing with the same person? You thinking you having a solo experience.
And we sitting here, like you said, talking around it. Instead of just calling the thing a thing, like what are we? So yeah, that's a thing. That is a thing. Talk to me about what happened because I have some notes here where you said, you know, essentially people turned their backs on you. So after the pregnancy, what happened?
Yeah, so after the pregnancy wasn't sort of the situation where people turn their back, to be quite honest. I think that my vulnerability in being vocal about it definitely sort of set the catalyst for other people being able to do that in the conversations we started having. The difficulty came is when I lost my child. So going through pregnancy, my child passing, I needed something different from my church family at that point and recognized that I could not sort of go back to that space. So I had to leave the church for a little while. I went to a different church. So this is the whole conversation. I'm telling my pastor, like, this is too triggering and painful for me to be here on Sunday. He was like, how about you go over here, spend a year here, get some healing and come back. So that's what I did. Problem is when I came back, he was gone. And there was a different pastor in place who didn't know me. And this is where some of the turning the back church hurt started, because to be quite honest, it became really cultish and really difficult. And at this point, I still don't know about scrupulosity. I still don't recognize the things that are happening to me and how it is being impacted because of, again, my temperament and my proneness to anxiety already. And so I am having experiences in which I'm feeling extremely anxious and constantly trying to tell myself that the death of my child was not a punishment. I can't believe it though, because what's being preached on Sunday and sort of the constant preaching of perfectionism as a Christian was just reinforcing the thought process in my brain that this is a punishment for the fact that I have sinned. I don't have my child because I sinned and God is punishing me. I had been having thoughts like this since I was a child. Like if my mom told me to clean my room, and then afterwards we go to King's Dominion, and then we don't go to King's Dominion because the weather shut it down, not because I didn't clean my room. My thought process was I didn't clean it well enough. I didn't clean it right. I didn't clean it perfectly. God saw that and made a decision that now you can't go. My brain wouldn't look at the natural factors. It was just A plus B equals C every time, and it would become obsessive and compulsive to the point that, I'm concerned that if I do this, then God's going to strike me down. That was my biggest fear. At any moment, I'm going to be struck down by lightning. And I've heard so many stories where people said that actually happened, that I could not convince my brain that it wasn't a thing that would happen to me at any moment. And so I had to pray the right way. I had to have these scriptures memorized. There would be times where I would be uttering scripture over and over again. And some people would hear this and think that, that's just how faith is. That's just how being in a religion is. You learn to do the practices of your faith. Well, it becomes OCD when there's a compulsive aspect to it, and you can't make yourself stop until you have convinced yourself that you've convinced God that you've done enough, almost like penance, whether it was, physical pain that is being caused, mental anguish, all of these acts that are not so much about fulfilling the faith-based aspect of the practice, but satisfying your mental health or satisfying what your brain believes needs to be done in order for you to be religious perfect. At that point, it didn't have nothing to do with God. It was between you and your mind trying to convince yourself you were doing enough to be enough.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that. I love how balanced you are in like being honest, because somebody with this same situation and diagnosis probably wouldn't see it the way that you do. And it sounds like you've gotten a lot of, and still are, in therapy, and someone is helping you, and correct me if I'm wrong, help you keep a balanced view of what's going on, because that's what I'm hearing and what I know about mental health. That's what it is. Like you said, it's something going on in your mind, your brain. It's literally like kind of like a glitch. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like if I do this many times, maybe it'll turn back on, but it's nothing that's going to satisfy that. It's just like it's glitching,
Yeah.
right? I'm just kind of like in shock over here. So I'm just processing. I want to know what happens next when you, like you said, you didn't know about religious scrupulosity yet. But after the passing of your child, and sending so much love to you because of that, because I do remember seeing, oh, look at that. I do remember seeing you talk about that, and I have a friend that, many actually, but a friend that, it's hard, really, really hard, really, really hard. And I'm just proud of you, like the way that you speak and your diction and your understanding of everything, because I know that's not easy, like especially with your own other traumas that I don't know about, and then the situation with your baby, being pregnant, being shunned because of it, and losing your baby, and then you dealing with all these different thoughts. That's a lot to deal with, and to be able to sit here and process it all and like speak in a way where it does make sense. Like I understand everything that you're saying. It's not an easy thing to do. And there have been people that have been on this podcast whose stories have not been the same. Like, and people that ain't on this podcast, it's on the side of the street talking to themselves. I have a very different view of mental health now, because I understand our brain more. And I feel like you do as well. Am I wrong on that?
Yeah. No, for me, there were there are different results, and this sort of answers your question as well. Because I had some people telling me, everything from God wanted your child, needed an angel, all of that foolishness. Um, and that's why he had to take him, blah, blah, blah. And me struggling with this, sort of, because people were prophesying, everything will be fine. We knew in advance that there was a sickness. And so I was holding on to faith that, and the prophecies that were coming in that said everything will be fine. And so when I approached my pastor and I was like, you said that God told you that this baby would be fine. And the response was, well, that doesn't necessarily mean on earth. And I felt like that feels like you're tricking me. Like what you're describing is a God that is sort of is playing games. And so that made for a very tough and difficult time for me. And I feel like I did the work. I prayed and shout out to Pastor Dante for really taking the time in that year to really let me, like every service, I felt so bad for the people because Pastor would be in the middle of preaching and I would just be crying the whole service, and they'd learn how to tune me out and just let me cry and get through it for that year. But then on the other hand, I had people like my best friend, again, shout out to Nikki McMullen, I'm just dropping all of my close homies, who sat down and had a conversation with me. He was like, this thing has happened. And we need you to keep living and keep going on. And so what does that look like? How can you live a life that honors who your son was and would have been? How can you live a life that is pleasing to the fact that you are a mother? Because at this time it was, I didn't have my current son, who just turned 4 this week. And so thank you. And so, I was really sort of struggling with who I am versus who I thought I would be. And again, I'm thinking that ritualism and being perfect and doing everything that God says I should do, and not necessarily God said, but what the pastor is saying, and the interpretations that people are giving me from the Bible said I should do, will put me on a right track. And it took a long time to realize there's nothing that I can do that will convince God to do anything different. I need to.
That's a word right there, honey.
That I had to, one, do the work. And so, unfortunately, a lot of times in the church, the work does not involve a therapist or mental health. If anything, you're seeing a pastor who has decided that they are in a position to provide therapeutic services, not realizing that they are doing a mess on people's mental health because you do not have the qualifications.
Can we pause? Because I need to stop. We have to stop here. I was talking to my twin sister who has a social work background. She was actually someone who was able to walk me through a lot of some mental health challenges I was having, like humanize me. I am kind of grateful that when I was going through those very dark periods in my life that I was not in somebody's church. And I know some people are gonna be like, oh my God, blasphemy. No. The reason I say that is because with your mental health and your brain, the way that God designed it, you gonna need some extra help. And yes, I know God is a God of miracles. That is my belief. I've experienced it, and so have other people. I'm not negating that. The supernatural and the spiritual world is very, very real. On the flip side, there are people who do need some support. And if your pastor or any church leader or religious leader of any religion is not versed in that, and they're trying to talk someone, say, through schizophrenia episodes, you know what I mean? Or whatever, religious scrupulosity, whatever, insert it. They don't have the skill for that.
Yeah.
And you're doing the person a disservice. And so you can do both. You can do both. And again, like you said, you may be doing more harm than good. And someone like you with the diagnosis that you have, being told over and over that, well, you thinking also because of the rhetoric that you heard that this somehow was a punishment because you lost your child. These are going through your thoughts at night. Nobody has to live with that but you. And if a pastors keep trying to console you, that this was God's plan, all of that stuff, whatever, but like you real life dealing with this every moment, you can't even go to the grocery store and shop. That's a problem.
Yeah.
And you may need some help, some real help. and your pastor, if
Right.
that's what you choose to do.
Yes.
So people are not being honest about that. I actually know someone who's been to a psych ward multiple times. And when they're not doing good, they are not doing good. And a lot of their trauma and mental health issues are rooted in perfectionism, religiosity. And I know that for a fact,
Yeah.
but people don't want to talk about that. People don't want to talk about the real life experiences and the mental health challenges that people are having related to religion, not just
Yeah.
Christianity. And that's where
Exactly.
you got to take your pastor down wear the robes no more, but you need to take that off at some point when you know people are really dealing with some mental stuff, and put your human suit back on and be like, listen, this is above my pay grade at this church.
Yeah.
Okay,
I
we
think
can get you some
I
help.
think people don't recognize too that like two brains could have go through the same experience, and the way they handle it will be different. So one person, like again, and I think that's the biggest concern when it comes to like religious OCD and scrupulosity, is that people are like, well, I do that all the time and that's not an issue. It doesn't bother me. You're just doing normal religious practices and your brain is handling it in a healthy way. My brain that is anxiety prone and has a temperament that is often scary. Like my husband can look at me and say boo, and I'm gonna jump out my skin. I am a naturally scary person. So my brain is internalizing all of this and flipping it on its head and making a monster of it. Like as a child and even now as an adult, there's still like a twinge of concerns of actual monsters and actual demons just walking up on me at any time. And while the pastor had no
Yeah,
intention of
yeah,
putting this sort of fear
yeah.
in me, they weren't aware of the fact that my brain is now recognizing that if I don't do this thing perfectly, I'm going to hell. I'm going to burn. God is going to punish me. All of these things become a sort of constant drilling and pounding. And then we try to solve for it by doing rituals that are often extreme, if not, praying for hours and making your brain sort of
Yeah,
burn onto scripture.
yeah.
And then there are physical things. I could tell you the amount of times that I have thrown out everything in my life because the start over I felt like I needed to do
Mm-hmm.
was necessary, where God is like, I need you to do
Mm-hmm.
none of that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Your brain is convincing you.
And I love how you are. I feel like there's a lot of maturity here, because you could easily sit in that seat and say, the church is bad, religion is bad, I hate it all, burn it down. That's not what you're saying. You know what I mean? And I do know that your faith walk does look different, but I can also, different now because of these experiences. I can appreciate, um, again, your wholesome view of all of this, because you're educated on your brain, on your mental health, and you're also giving grace and saying that religious leaders may not know the impact of some of this. And so I appreciate that. Um, I want to move forward. I know we talked about some ideation, suicidal ideations that you were having. Talk a little bit about that for the person listening that's dealing with this, that does not know how to tell their pastor, that does not know how to tell their family, that's having these intruding, looping thoughts. What do you say to them if they are considering what you were considering at that time?
Mm. Okay. So I think for me, it's necessary to recognize that scrupulosity, religious OCD, is a sickness, is an illness. And it is not something that I am doing or something that I've caused or something that I have control over.
Mm.
We are often gracious and have more grace for people whose sicknesses are not because of something they've done. But mental health oftentimes feels like something I am doing to cause this, or something that about me that creates this. And if I can find the right pattern, that I can change that. If we remember that that's not true, that there's nothing that you can do or perfect buttons that you can push in order to sort of change the brain pattern, that it's not even your responsibility to do so, then you forgive yourself just a little bit more. And ending your life doesn't become the solution when you recognize that there are other options out there because you are dealing with an illness. No one would tell someone who was diagnosed with cancer or any sort of sickness that you did this to yourself. And, uh, you know, suicide wouldn't be a solution for the pain that is being caused to them. Whereas with mental health, we often we do that to ourselves. Something's wrong with me. I am broken. I have caused this thing to happen. Um, so for me, there's sort of a constant reminder to not place blame on myself. Now, there's some other spaces I could blame, child. I often joke about the fact that my mama used to say that if you ever want to hurt yourself, I would rather see you in jail than dead. So go hurt that person. Don't hurt yourself. I'm not encouraging. I'm not encouraging anybody to go do anything to anyone. But I think we just need to treat ourselves with enough grace. Again, I'm not an expert. I don't have any. I'm in school right now for social work, so I don't have the degrees to be able to make any to help anyone in that space. The only thing I can say is just remember that you're going through something. You are not that thing. While there isn't necessarily always a cure or another side, I'll use Toni Morrison's words. I just posted this on Facebook today. That when we survive, it doesn't always look like wholeness. Sometimes we just survive in part. So parts of you feel like they are surviving a situation. That doesn't mean that you're now completely whole again. We're striving for wholeness, and that's why it feels like we haven't met the goal. But look at how far you've come and where you are now, and be proud of that, and use that as the stepping stone. Big up yourself. Remind yourself you're all in the bag of chips.
I love that. Thank you for sharing. Mama is in the comments. She said, sadly, the religion of people required that condemnation, but thankfully God does not. Amen. She said, amen. Pray, get professional help in all caps, and then pray some more. Love, love, love that. God is so good, honey, and will lead you to where you need to be. But if your doctrine is not sound, then there could be some situations in there that might be a little bit more hurtful than helpful. So just consider the source. And that's with any religious space. There's a lot of good and there's a lot of bad happening. So if you get caught up in the wrong spaces, it can be really, really detrimental. And wanted to also
church
talk
hop
about,
if you need to.
What you say?
Church hop. I know they say they don't like when people church hop, but please don't stay somewhere that's bad for you just because it's a church on every corner. Go to another one if you need to, please.
Yes. I would love to hear more about your relationship now with church.
Gotcha. Yeah, so I am in the in-between space. And that's something that I work through with my therapist, because there is the before times where you had the language, you had the answers, you had the understanding. And then you get to where things start to not make sense. And that happens for people at any points of life, where you can't grapple with the fact that the church is telling you that this is bad, but this seems good to you. I think the biggest example I can think of is homosexuality. The church constantly preaching that homosexuality is bad, but then you have your good gay best friend, and you have people around you who are so loving. And so I now can't be convinced that you told me that these people are bad, but I'm around these people and they are love. And now I got to think that maybe you're bad.
Sometimes even more loving than you, doing the finger pointing.
Yes, absolutely. And that was it for me, even especially going to Versus, kind of being around these people that I was sort of sent to minister to. And I'm finding that this is my community. These are my people. This is all love. I think Lorna was really one of those people for me that I was just like, this person exudes love in a way that feels supernatural. You can't tell me that she is not like God personified. And so if these two things don't align with each other, now we end up in this space that I like to call the great questioning, where you have to start questioning everything. And the answer to that on the other end, I ain't there yet. I'm still in that space where I'm sort of looking and watching and learning and understanding, and trying to find new language. I'm actually working on a blog right now about that, the process of trying to learn new language. When the church had once given you answers, you have to step away. And now it's like, so how do I pray if I'm not using these scriptures, or if I'm not using in Jesus's name in the end of the scripture? Do I even still pray? What does it look like when someone comes to me, needing me to pray for them? And so right now I'm in that space where I am asking questions, open to listen and learn and answers, trying to keep my heart consistently open. And one of the things that I always say is that I'm going to trust the God in me more than any version of God people can give me. And in that process, one of the things that I have been learning and seeing is that a lot of what people told me what God looked like and how God was is not the way he's revealing himself to me. And I say he because that's just the language that I'm sort of used to. Um, and I have been in situations that were really dangerous and really tricky and trying to figure out how to get out of it. And when God spoke, I'm like, whoa, they told me that you don't say to do that. And I shouldn't be like this. And I shouldn't be like that. And God is clear as day saying, if you want to survive this situation, then you need to do this to get out of it. And again, because I'm trusting the God in me more than the God that anyone is showing me, I'm like, okay, so now what does it look like? Because mind you, the Bible is full of stories in which people did stuff that we said God said you ain't supposed to do. God is saying to go here and do this and be with that person and have this sort of interaction relationship, but then we teach a different version of that in church. We're supposed to learn from the story, but not necessarily do the things that were done. And again, that creates a falseness in regards to the perfectionism that I'm trying to exist with. Yeah, I won't go too deep into it because I know we're at time, but
That is a great
definitely.
girl. This is so good. I wanted to piggyback off what you said, and thank you for sharing that. I want to say to anybody, and this is my personal belief, that it's okay to question your spiritual walk. In fact, personally, I encourage it because how do you know you believe what you believe? You know what I'm saying? We get handed things. Most people, whatever they grew up learning, and this is what their parents did, that's what they do. But it's okay to have a question and raise your hand, even if to yourself. I think that's okay. That we are open with ourselves, and if we don't share with other people, cool, about the questions that we have. It's okay. And
Yeah, we gotta make it make
yeah,
sense. And I think so many times people in the church, the pastor may make a rule or a statement or some sort of um, or preach something as a truth, and then you're sitting in the audience like that doesn't quite make sense, but you choose not to question it. You just go with it, and that's going to get you to a point where if it doesn't make sense for you, you're not going to be able to keep up with it for so long. And so that questioning space, that church you were talking about earlier where they had the tables, that's absolutely what churches need. Let people have conversation with each other. That's how the original church of the day was. When nobody's sitting in a pulpit, when nobody up front, when nobody in the seats, it was conversations, community, people.
And what I find interesting that I don't think we raise up enough is that you use the word predatory. There are predatory people out there. There are people that do things they say they don't do. There are people in pulpits, at temples, at mosques, preaching against the very things they do. So that is a real truth. And if you are under leadership of someone like that, you could catch yourself trying to exist in perfectionism. Meanwhile, because of what they're saying, they're not even doing the same thing. So again, it's important to recognize, in whatever your walk looks like, if you're going to be under the leadership of someone, discern their intentions, discern who they are in the spirit. That's really important to me.
And that thing will break a person when you've been under leadership and you're trying to strive to be like this person and the things that they're teaching you. And then you find out that they can't even keep up. That will be enough to make people walk away altogether. If the pastor can't do it, how am I supposed to do it? And I appreciate any pastor who can be honest and vulnerable about who they are and not just their past and where they came from, but what life looks like now. We need to be on the same page. Pastors are often put in a hierarchy or a leadership position in which they become almost untouchable. We use that touch not thy anointed. Well, baby, I'm anointed too. And your interactions with me should be just as heartfelt, honest, and pure as the ones I'm supposed to have with you. I've had a pastor tell me one time, like, I'm not one of your little friends. And I was like, first of all, my mama's the only one who can say that. But second of all, if you can't be my friend, then how I can't let you lead me, because what you're telling me is you can't be vulnerable to me and you don't feel any responsibility to me. I'm supposed to do whatever you say, but then you don't even have the courtesy to give me a friendship and a love that would return that. I need to know who you are as a person in order to leave behind you, not just the image you paint on Sunday morning. And child, they be painting some images sometime, down to the makeup artists that show up to put that face on for you. I need you to leave all of that production behind and let's have a real church experience.
My God, you said a word, honey. Listen, thank you for sharing. I also have to ask you this last question, and then we'll get into what you do. That's our last segment. Your mom has been very supportive, and I hear that she is a minister still. What mama got to say about all this? And I know she probably gonna type something in the chat, child.
So interestingly enough, my mom was probably getting a lot of this for the first time, because I tend to, when it comes to my stuff, I write about it and I'm like, read it. And if you have some questions, ask me.
Yeah.
But, so she knows a lot about what I dealt with during that time. She was being very vigilant. My mama, whether you prophetic, third eye, whatever you want to call it, she be on it. And she'd be like, something is off about this person in this ministry that you're under. And so she was sort of keeping me prayed up and warning. One of the things that I say is that my mother, I have watched her be almost supernatural in the way that she forgives and in the way that she honors people in her life. And that comes back to her. Like, my mama, we'll be out in the restaurant and she gonna laugh about this, because how many times have we just been like, somebody be like, oh, they covered your meal, oh, it's already paid for, or it's already taken care of. Because my mama's the type of person that if the waiter mentions that my refrigerator is broken, my mama mailing a refrigerator to the house. You don't even know this lady from nowhere, but she wants to take care of people and she's good to people. And so while I think a lot of the difficulty in the church could have led me to a space where I was like, no God, no church, no nothing. People like my mom, people like Sister Robinette, people like Pastor Dante, are people that I could recognize, and Lorna, that the genuineness that they have and the love that they are displaying is the type of love that we expect to see from God. Those people help people hold on to their faith.
Woo! Girl, I love that. Shout out to Mama. I love that, even though some of the stuff she heard for the first time, that you can say in your home that you were raised by somebody who shows and knows God's love. Everybody don't have that experience. So I love, love, love to hear that. Paula, what do you do? And the reason I ask that is because I want to know, on this journey of healing, of wellness, what is giving you joy? What's giving you healing? How are you coping? What are your practices?
Yes. So one is loving on my son has been a gift from God. I don't think of my son as a redo or a return of what was taken from me. This is a different situation, a different person. I am a mother who has two children and two different souls. But loving on my son has allowed me to forced me to, one, look at my past and the way that I was raised and the things that I don't want from him, for him. And, my therapist gets on me about this all the time, because I get so tough on myself in regards to making sure that I don't do anything that, would cause him to want to write a poem about me one day, like trying to make sure that I am perfect. And again, a little bit of that OCD and her having to remind me that there is no perfection. The fact that you're even thinking about it is proof that you are trying to do the work and trying to be better. The younger generation in my family is really trying to have some of those conversations. For the longest time, I thought my family was not one of those sweep the stuff under the rug types, until I started looking under the rug and there was stuff under there. And I said, in order to keep this from happening again, we're going to have to start talking about it. And so I do the work with my therapist. I do the work in my own writing and being honest, whether it's performing it, writing it, blogging about it, any of those things. I do the work by having tough conversations with the people in my life. How did I hurt you? Did I hurt you? What can I do to be different? And then also teaching. I enjoy teaching, doing the therapeutic writing work because I'm getting just as much from my students as I'm giving. So it could be a little bit selfish, but every time I'm having one of those sessions where, I'm not the type of teacher that gives out assignments. We're doing this work together. This is a group therapy sort of session, therapeutic session. And also doing the work by taking care of myself. Child, I went to a movie last night at 8:30. We had a babysitter. I needed some time alone, and I will be honest about the fact somebody take this baby so I can go get some self-care and solo time. I take care of myself, recognizing that the best version of me is going to be the best version for those
And
around
you
me.
also have
Some of those so
you also have a supportive partner and husband.
yes, absolutely. And he's a comedian, so if anything, we're gonna laugh in this house. Even if I'm being picked on, we laughing about it.
I
So
love
yes.
that. Your mom said I had to transform to, and I honor your truth. That is a powerful statement for me to read personally because of my own experiences. So that was a healing moment for me when your mama said that just now. Oh, I love that. She said, silence kills. Speak and heal the world. Amen, honey. She has spoken her truth today.
Minister Michelle, come on.
Come on, Minister Michelle. I am so proud of you, Paula. And again, I thank you for coming on my platform and sharing your story. It was great as I knew it would be. And I'm looking forward to continuing to see what you got going on in life. And if there's any way I can support you, definitely let me know. Is there anything that you want to share before we end the episode?
Yeah, please follow me, www.lackofbetter.com. We do everything around here from a poetry and comedy shows. We hosting trivia night tonight over in Petersburg at Soul Rebel Cafe. So stay tuned because my goal is not just to share, but to help people to learn to share. I love Venice, but I don't expect her to answer at 2:00 in the morning. But I know how to open that notebook, have conversations with myself, write it out. And so that is what I'm teaching people to do, to learn how to sort of sit in the silence, sit with their truth. Once you have that truth, you can't deny it, no matter how ugly and uncomfortable it may be. But now that you hold it and you own it, you can start that journey and start that truth process. And that's what I want from people, for people.
Yeah. Yes. Thank you, Paula, for joining the Soul Seat.
Thank you, Chad.
You are very welcome. Have a wonderful day. I'm just going to stay on for a few moments and make a couple closing announcements.
You too. All right. Bye.
Bye, girl. Y'all, that is episode 42 of Soul Seat Conversations. As you can see, Paula is amazing. She has gone through a lot. She's transformed it. And I just had to share her story with y'all. So thank you for listening. Thank you for listening objectively and just hearing her truth, hearing my truth, hearing the story shared. Love is the answer. God is love. You are love. And that's what this podcast episode is about. And ultimately, we pray that she stays on her healing journey and gets and continues getting the support that she needs. Shout out to Roots to Restore RVA. They are awesome local counseling firm here in Richmond, Virginia. So y'all reach out to them and get you some services, man. Stay healed, stay whole. Also, I want to say shout out to the Soul Tribe family. Y'all are amazing. This podcast episode was very interactive. Thank y'all for being in the comments. Thank you for the new follows. Mama Michelle, Minister Michelle, it was great to have you. Welcome to the Soul Tribe family. If you made it to the end, leave some sunshine emojis down in the bottom if you are watching this in a visual space. Remember to mind your mind and shine your light. I will see y'all next month for episode 43. Peace.